Today's episode isn't just a rundown of stories, it's a diagnosis. We dissect three iron-fisted rulers with charm, chill, and consistency. Paul Kagame, who turned Rwanda into a digital fortress with disappearing dissidents. Paul Biya, whose ghost governed Cameroon from Swiss sweets since the 80s. And Theodore Obiang, who turned Equatorial Guinea into the Obiang Family Trust. My name is Ashwin Berry, and this is Second Take, Dictator Watch. If you've ever wondered whether trauma makes leaders or leaders make trauma, Paul Kagame is your case study, your syllabus, and your exam paper. Born in Tambwe in 1957, Kagame came into a Rwanda that was warming up its machetes. The anti-Tutsi violence that broke out in the 1960s sent young Paul and his family fleeing to Uganda like refugees. They ended up in Nchurungezi refugee camp, where Kagame's political education began not with books, but with the sound of displacement, hunger, and whispered promises of return. He didn't spend his formative years in ivy-covered universities, but in the gritty, smoke-filled arenas of Uganda's bush wars. Ntare Secondary School taught him the basics, but Yoweri Museveni's National Resistance Army gave him a graduate diploma in guerrilla governance. When Museveni won and took power in 1986, Kagame was already there, wearing sunglasses of power and carrying secrets like a man who knew he'd be writing history soon. When Fred Rwingema, his comrade, co-founded the Rwandan Patriotic Front in 1987, Kagame was right there too, whispering strategy and storing up loyalty like a squirrel hoarding acorns for a cold. Then came the big play, 1990, the RPF invasion. Rwigema died under murky circumstances, and Kagame, who was off at Fort Leavenworth, soaking in U.S. military theory and learning how to make coups smell like constitutional duty, was suddenly recalled. He returned, reorganized the rebellion, and played a long, slow, painful game of liberation chess. Move by move, he turned loss into lesson, setbacks into strategy. By 1994, Kigali fell not just to an army but to an idea that Kagame was inevitable, that he was destiny dressed in camo and discipline. Rwanda was broken, bleeding, and terrified, but Kagame stepped into that void not with soft promises, but with cold command. Paul Kagame's Rwanda is a country where efficiency is not just a goal, it's the national religion. Streets are clean enough to eat off, plastic bags are illegal, and children speak 5 languages by age of 10. Kigali doesn't just have Wi-Fi, it has dignity. Vision 2020 wasn't just a government policy, it was the nation's baptism. From 2000 onward, Kagame turned Rwanda into the Switzerland of Africa, if you will, except with fewer banks and more surveillance. Donors clapped, tourists came, even the World Economic Forum packed their briefcases and held hands in Kigali. But while the skyline was rising, the opposition was disappearing. Like literal magic, except the magician wore army boots and didn't smile. Under Kagame, Rwandan democracy evolved into something unique. Elections were held, but results were preordained. 95% in 2003, 93% in 2010, 98.8% in 2017, and finally 99.2% in 2024, which in Rwandan math is actually humility. Kagame didn't just win elections, he made you feel guilty for doubting him. The opposition, Victoire Ingabire, went from presidential hopeful to prisoner. Diane Rwigara was disqualified for daring to think out loud. Ethnic politics were outlawed under the noble goal of unity. But really, it made criticism a criminal act. As for the media, don't even whisper. John Williams Ntwali died under unclear circumstances in 2023. In Kagame's Rwanda, you either echo the party line or you echo in exile. Independent newspapers exist, the same way unicorns do, in imagination and foreign documentaries. But here's the twist. Ordinary Rwandans, especially the young, still support him. Because under his rule, hospitals work, roads exist, crime is low, corruption gets you jailed, not promoted. There's healthcare, education, and peace. In Africa's political syllabus, that counts for everything. Kagame's genius isn't just power. It's power wrapped in results. You may not like how he runs Rwanda, but you can't argue that it runs. Paul Kagame is what you get when you blend military discipline with good branding. He walks into Western capitals like a clean-shaven messiah with data sheets, not slogans. Bill Clinton praised him. Tony Blair advised him. Even the EU tried to act like it didn't notice the smell of suppressed dissent. Rwanda received over $1 billion in aid annually until 2015, much of it wrapped in a shiny bow of development metrics. The West looked at Rwanda and said, he's not a dictator, he's just efficient. And Kagame, ever the disciplined tactician, took that perception and built a global brand out of it. He sent troops to South Sudan, Mozambique, and Mali. He chaired the AU and talked Pan-African reform. Meanwhile, back home, a quiet purge of political diversity kept the nation tidy. In the East, DRC, under siege, Kigali insisted it had nothing to do with M23 rebels, but evidence keeps popping up like a recurring rash. Rwanda denies it. The UN frowns. Kagame stares back. In 2024, the West finally started sending sternly worded letters, which Rwanda promptly recycled. Inside Rwanda, Kagame remains unshaken. Succession talk is taboo, even though he's 67. People whisper names like Ange Kagame, his daughter. But out loud, it's only Paul. Always only Paul Kagame. The RPF is less a party than a perfectly tuned orchestra with one conductor. Everyone is either clapping or quiet. Kagame doesn't call himself a king, but he has the power of one and the wardrobe of a minimalist CEO. His critics call him authoritarian. His supporters call him necessary. Rwanda itself remains a paradox, a place of clean streets, silent prisons, upward graphs, and downward freedoms. Kagame is the man who is credited with essentially ending a genocide and building a model African state by making sure nobody else gets to model anything else. His presidency is no longer a term, it's a system. And as long as Paul Kagame delivers peace, order, and respect on the international stage, few inside Rwanda or outside the country will challenge the price.
It all began with ink on paper, a small but powerful voice that reached the homes of Namibians, sharing their stories, their triumphs, their struggles. As the world evolved, so did we. From the presses to your screens, keeping you connected to the news that matters, wherever you are. We didn't stop at digital. We brought the action to life on your screens, covering the moments that unite us all. We're not just a source of information. We're your partner in exploration, booking your stay, paying for your meals, and even sending your event tickets straight to your phone. Reaching over 1 million people daily, we are a fully integrated system, working together to make your life easier. Whether it's news, events, or everyday information, we've brought it all together. We're committed to empowering the next generation. Through partnerships and innovation, we're delivering education to every corner of Namibia. We've become so much more. More than news, more than information. We're here to help you enjoy everything Namibia has to offer. NTV, so much more than just television.
We now swing over to yet another Paul. Yes, we delve into the long life of Paul Biya, the man who plans to rule Cameroon into his hundreds. Born in 1933 in the southern village of Myomeka, he was first groomed for priesthood until divine calling was cut short by teenage expulsion. What followed was a French education soaked in colonial chic law, diplomacy, and public administration, all the right sources for a future African president marinated in Western validation. Returning to Cameroon in 1962, he began climbing through government like a quiet ninja in a tailor-made suit. Within 2 decades, Biya went from bureaucratic furniture to constitutional heir, aided by Hayijo's mysterious resignation and a perfectly timed amendment. Once seated on the throne in 1982, he pledged loyalty to his predecessor, then swiftly dissolved their bromance. Ahijo fled to Paris, coups fled, and Biya purged with precision, transforming Cameroon's political architecture to fit his blueprint. From one-party dominance to carefully staged multi-party illusions, Biya mastered the art of democratic cosplay, running unopposed, winning implausibly, and framing opposition parties like poorly written subplots. By the 1990s, international pressure prompted him to legalize opposition parties, over 200 of them, yet none strong enough to unseat the carefully greased CPDM machine. Biya didn't just run elections, he choreographed them with ballot boxes, boundary redrawing, and borrowed legitimacy, all of them dancing in rhythm. Despite pledges to fight corruption, Paul Biya's presidency morphed into a masterclass in legalized patronage. Anti-graft drives were weaponized to neutralize rivals, while his Beti ethnic group enjoyed disproportionate elevation. Institutions hollowed out, opposition leaders like Maurice Kamto jailed, and journalists gagged. Cameroon's democracy became a polished play doh with no pulse. Meanwhile, Biya curated foreign friendships like prized furniture. France offered military backup and colonial nostalgia, of course, while China brought loans and strategic silence, of course. His economic leadership, marred by austerity and civil servant salary slashes, birthed a thriving informal sector and a generation fluent in survival. Cameroon's internal crises piled up. Anglophone marginalization exploded into rebellion. Boko Haram raided the far north, and national conversations grew quieter as Biya's absences grew longer. From the plush confines of Geneva's Intercontinental Hotel, Biya governed a nation he rarely touched, with even his health now considered a national security matter. Yet, even at 92, this year, he announced a re-election bid, prompting both laughter and lament across the continent. Cameroon is now a nation suspended between borrowed stability and imposed stagnation, with press conferences replaced by presidential absences. Paul Biya's rule is a slow-burning paradox, a quiet tyranny performed with the calm of a grandfather reading bedtime stories to a nation on fire. He has become Cameroon's longest-lasting habit, part tradition, part trauma. History under his watch is less written than edited. Textbooks feature him more prominently than independence, and children grow up thinking he invented Cameroonian politics. His legacy floats somewhere between veneration and exhaustion. A hero to some, a relic to most. As Cameroon braces for yet another ritualistic election, Paul Biya stands not merely as a politician, but as a political condition, immune to change and immune to shame. He didn't just outlast opponents, he outlasted expectation. Cameroon's tragedy is not just its aging leader, but the normalization of his excesses. Elections without choice, reforms without change, and silence so loud it echoes across generations. In the archive of African leadership, Biya's file remains open, not because history is unsure, but because the present refuses to move on. And so we ask again, with sincerity, will Paul Biya ever leave? Or will the nation simply learn to live with the ghost of his governance forever lingering like furniture you're too tired to replace?
Explore the beauty of Namibia with our car rentals. From wide open spaces to the plains of Namibia's national parks, enjoy the freedom of the open road. Go anywhere you want, whenever you want. We've got you covered, even in the most remote locations. Visit our website and see what we have to offer.
Teodoro Obiang Mbasogo's story begins like many post-colonial power plays, with a uniform, foreign education, and a family tree soaked in ambition. Born in 1942 in colonial Spanish Guinea, he sharpened his teeth in Spanish military academies before returning home to a newly independent Equatorial Guinea, where his uncle, Francisco Mackay's Nguema, had declared himself supreme leader and national disaster. Obiang rose through the ranks as a prison boss and military man, helping administer the regime's reign of terror until 1979, when Francisco's paranoia began allegedly cannibalizing his own family. Coup Obiang's coup. Less about democracy, more about switching seats at the torture table. With Machias executed and power secured, Obiang created the illusion of reform while building an iron-fisted dynasty. The 1982 constitution handed him unchecked authority. By 1987, he had created the PDGE, his personal political fan club disguised as a party, and began staging elections so hilariously fraudulent they made democracy look like improv theater. Over the decades, Obiang ran virtually unopposed, winning over 90% of the vote every time, while the opposition faced censorship, jail time, or suspicious disappearances. It was less a presidency than a long-winded magic trick. Now you see democracy, now you don't. Obiang's real coup came in liquid form. Oil, discovered in 1996, turned Equatorial Guinea into one of Africa's richest countries per capita. The wealth, however, was hoarded with the zeal of a dragon guarding gold. While ordinary citizens lacked clean water, education, or healthcare, the Obiang family lived like a West African episode of Succession. His son, Teodorin, became the global poster child for cartoonish corruption, buying Bugattis, Malibu mansions, and Michael Jackson's glove on a ministerial salary. Despite international investigations and convictions in France and the US, Teodorin was promoted to vice president and tasked with leading the nation's anti-corruption commission, which is like asking a snake to monitor your chickens. Meanwhile, rival family factions brewed quiet tension, turning Equatorial Guinea's government into a nepotistic drama. At home, dissent was criminalized, opposition parties banned, media muzzled, and prisons filled with those brave enough to call it what it is, a kleptocracy. Abroad, Obiang balanced hypocrisy with style, courting US oil firms while collecting prizes from North Korea and serving as African Union chair with a straight face. Now, over 4 decades into his reign, Obiang remains one of Africa's longest-serving leaders, part emperor, part escape artist. He survived at least 10 coup attempts, eliminated the death penalty on paper, and continues to govern from a fortress guarded by foreign mercenaries and familial paranoia. His rule is textbook authoritarianism, a fusion of military might, electoral farce, and economic manipulation, all packaged in a regime that speaks the language of development while silencing voices with batons. As he ages, the question of succession looms. Will it be Teodorin, the globe-trotting Gucci general, or another well-dressed branch of the Obiang family tree? Regardless, his legacy is already cemented, not in democratic progress or national unity, but in yachts, luxury watches, and oil-fueled autocracy. He didn't just outlast his enemies, he rewrote the manual on how to privatize a country and turn a nation's trauma into a family business.
Welcome to Namibia, where adventure meets tranquility. With Enjoy, you have access to a wide range of accommodations to suit every traveler's taste and budget. Experience the finest dining and hospitality Namibia has to offer. Booking your dream accommodation is just a few clicks away with Enjoy. Join thousands of happy travelers who have trusted Enjoy for their Namibian getaway. Your gateway to unforgettable Namibian adventures. Visit us today at enjoy.my.na.
All right. We've been going through Dictator Watch, but there is a space where you, the ordinary individual, actually has control. And it's TikTok. So let's have a look at my TikToks of the week.
Hello, welcome to Advice to Young Men with Dr. Hugh Ellis and Frans the Bear. Today I want to say, resist the urge to be corrupt. Right now, as you may know, 8 people are on trial for fraud and corruption at a state-owned enterprise in my country. The case is alleged to involve as much as 480 million Namibian dollars. That's about 27 million US. That's a lot of money. And it can be tempting when you read and hear about cases like this, where even the smallest amounts of money mentioned would literally solve all your financial problems. I know they would solve all of mine. It's tempting to think, well, why don't I be a little bit corrupt as well? And maybe you'll never reach oil rot or fish rot levels, but definitely as your career progresses, there will be chances, small or big, to cheat. To forge documents, to tell lies, to receive bribes or favors, to do things that are just a little bit irregular. And I think we all know when those things we're doing are not quite right. And what I want to say is, please resist the urge to do that. You may or may not get caught. But what I will say is that the chances of getting caught are actually a lot bigger than you might think. Sooner or later, people find things out. And you don't want that. More than that, a clear conscience is really, really priceless. The ability to sleep well at night, to look yourself in the mirror, to know that you're doing the best you can do at work, to know that despite all the corruption of the world, you are an honest man. So you may never earn the Namcor oil rot money in your entire career, but think of it this way. You don't have a magistrate who's going to decide whether you sleep in your own bed tonight or whether you sleep in jail. So I'd say avoid the urge to be corrupt no matter what. Okay, I'm out.
I beg you. Who did this beat for me? Who did this beat go for me?
So there you have it. 3 presidents, 3 regimes, and nearly a century's worth of authoritarian rule. Kagame gave us order with oversight removed. Biya gave us stillness mistaken for stability. And Obiang gave us wealth that trickled upward like it was running from the people. Second Take isn't here to shock. It's here to remind you tyranny doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just smiles, paves the road, and never leaves. As the continent's youth rise, the question isn't whether these leaders will let go. It's whether the people will finally stop mistaking silence for peace. My name is Ashwin Berry, and that has been my second take.